what is the easiest way to actually show people that you know something, that they should pay you for that particular information? And I don't care how many times I have to say this, the easiest way is to just share it all. Share it for free. Bad writing, I feel like, is more easily forgivable just because it's harder to spot, harder to notice, right? If a post is super short, even like for a lot of people, if it's according to my standards and what I consider good writing and what I consider to be good structure, good spacing, this and that, even if it's badly written or poorly written, a whole lot of people will still read it, right? Not everyone, but a whole lot of people will still read it. I don't feel like that's the same case with video. Video requires a much higher level of concentration.
Before we start this podcast, I have one little favor to ask you. Can you please hit the subscribe button down below so we can help more people every single week? Thank you. All right, man, let's kick off. So where I want to start, and there's a lot of places we could start, but if you were to break it down, what's one thing that people aren't doing on LinkedIn that they should be doing?
One thing that a whole lot of people aren't doing on LinkedIn right now is posting. I'll be honest. All of the data that we have currently shows that not a whole lot of people are posting their own content. Exactly 1.1%. That's 1.1% of LinkedIn's 1 billion plus users are only publishing one post a week. And less than 1% are publishing two, and then it goes even, less and less and less when we're talking 3, 4, 5 posts a week, let alone every day of the week. So less than, around 1%, precisely 1.1, one post per week. So this is all to say LinkedIn still is an open field for everyone. Like the arena, the play, the game is wide open. It's right up for the taking. So if you're not playing the LinkedIn game right now, get in the game, man. The whistle's already been blown. So yeah, for sure.
Man, I thought that 1% statistic was like from like 4 years ago, because I was saying that 4 years ago in my content. And like for context, like I have always started out on LinkedIn. So I had a careers podcast and I thought, oh, what do career people want to do? They want to learn about LinkedIn. So I'd post it on LinkedIn and people would listen and stuff. But it wasn't growing like super normal like levels. Like you see some people like Matt Gray and Justin Welsh and whatnot. But the opportunity was always there. And I began to become like a key person within my own like small niche, even with a small audience. And I was like, oh, like I was always telling people the 1% post, 1% post, 1% of audience post. And I thought it was kind of gone at this stage. But the common knowledge you see now is that the opportunity in LinkedIn is running out. What do you think about that? Do you think the opportunity is running out?
I feel like anyone who's just starting out right now in 2024 on LinkedIn, they have the easiest path ever. Just because a whole lot of people are quitting. That's the reason. And I can give you the example of myself. I started LinkedIn in January 2020, right before Corona started, and I posted for like 5 days, and I quit just because I was focused on the wrong things. Most people feel like posting really good content is enough. It's not. You're not just gonna magically get those likes and those views. You're not. And I quit for the entire year, and then, again, New Year's resolutions, January 2021, I started again. I lasted for 5 weeks. I was better, and then I quit again just because nothing had, happened. I wasn't moving the needle, and I was just watching, man, like a whole lot of people that started with me in 2020 at first, I just watched them not quit, and they had reached a new level. They had reached something. They had built a new level, a new layer of business. And I was like, I got to do something differently, man. Because if they can do it, sure as hell, I can do it for sure. It was honestly, I'll be completely honest. It was envy. I was like angry at myself. I was angry at everyone. I was just like, if they can do it, and I know I have 10x more knowledge than they do, I know I can do it. And this might sound bad and pompous, but that was legitimately the reason I started on LinkedIn. I was just watching everyone around me grow. And I was like, I gotta do better. Like, I gotta do better. I know better. So I went all in on understanding what actually works. And one of the bigger things that worked and works to this day is just showing up in other people's feeds, showing up under people's posts. It wasn't expecting people to come to you. You actually had to seek out that viewership. So whenever people are posting, especially bigger creators, go. Be the first one to comment under their posts, but leave a pretty darn good comment, something that will attract attention. I was doing that for months, and people immediately started labeling me as the comment guy. This was just months into, me starting this journey on LinkedIn. Why? Because every freaking post you opened, every freaking post you started to scroll under, whose comment was the first one? Mine. Whose comment had the most reactions and replies? Mine. Just because I was like, you know what? When I'm posting, people might see it. But when I'm commenting, especially on these bigger posts that do get a whole lot of traction, there's a definite chance that people will see it. So I treated every comment like a post. I genuinely did. I spent hours on the platform at the very beginning, man. I'm talking 4, 5, 6 hours per day, strictly commenting as if my life depended on it. And I wasn't doing those very basic, generic comments, right? Great post. Hey, I like this there and I like this. No, if someone posted 7 tips, I was given number 8. If someone said one thing, I said, in my experience, this is what happens. I was offering my own, point of view. Um, I was sharing a whole lot of my process. I was sharing everything. And people realized, oh my God, this guy is just giving it all away, And we don't necessarily have to only wait for his posts. We can hit follow, and every time he comments somewhere, we're gonna get all the value out of it. So that was my primary method of growing my following. At the very beginning, last year as well, this year as well. I kid you not, commenting really well and in all the right places and just giving it all away, like your entire playbook. That's been my main strategy since day one, and it still is to this day. Like you can ask anybody. I just choose to give it all away, and I wouldn't change a thing.
What's interesting there is that it almost is like its own SEO engine, because if you were to picture, if you were typing in like let's say like 8 different things to improve your offer, and you put in the ninth one, and that comes to the very top. That's like putting it into Google, right? Typing into how do I build an offer? You're the ninth one. Turns out Jay actually has an offer, helps people build an offer, helps people build LinkedIn. It's almost like has that organic search engine, but because like the bar is set so low in terms of one, people giving up, and two, the standard of comments now is so shit that it's like AI generated. Like Justin Welsh put up that screenshot recently, which was like 10 people saying the same thing in the same comment, which can only damage you, right? It's like it almost detaches from it. Now, you mentioned something very interesting about how you give everything away. And I think this is kind of interesting to compare and contrast here. And I'm happy to share where we are with our business and where we are in that kind of level and stuff too, so on. Because you've been someone who you share like your personal stories, your journeys, you have that dear son approach in terms of your writing, and it's very it's almost like specific, and you're bringing in that emotive area. That's something I definitely struggled with. Tactics, techniques, how-to guides, no problem. I'll build a system, I'll throw it on LinkedIn, we'll get engagement, but you've been able to kind of pull that almost emotional side. How do you think about that in writing? Because I think a lot of males in particular, or else it's just me, struggle with something like that. 90% of podcasts don't make it to episode 3. Of the 10% that are left, 90% don't make it to episode 20. And you've maybe felt this as well. In the beginning of your podcast, it's very difficult to build your authority, build your influence, and get any traction. You could be feeling no leads, under pressure, getting a lot of stress with your actual work as well right now, and it's against what you were meant to be doing it. The whole idea with your podcast is to build authority and trust, and I know exactly how difficult it is from the very beginning. I started kickoff sessions almost 4 years ago with just a $60 microphone and a 30-day money back guarantee. I was so afraid that it wasn't going to work that I almost didn't even start. I know how difficult it is to get going, but over time I was refining the process and getting better. And over time you walk before you can actually run. We were making a small adjustments every 10, every 20, every 30 episodes to get that 1 inch better. And I like to say it's 1% better every single day that we're moving towards. As the episodes compounded, we started to see proper results. And this was the genesis of Voix. This is how we went from just one small podcast to building an entire company around how to help you build your influence and authority with podcasts. It isn't about random growth, it's about working on the fundamentals. It's about getting your operations right, your strategy right, your production right, even how to monetize your podcast. So if you've been wanting to build your influence with your podcast, and if you want to be able to connect with your ideal customer profile, build a network, grow your business, grow the influence of your actual content, there's a better and more powerful way for you to grow your podcast. The whole goal is to make sure you're hitting your ideal customer profile, you're building your influence, you're building your authority, and the business on the back end is producing cash flow for you. That's been the entire philosophy behind Voix, how we run the show for you. You focus on revenue producing activities, while we focus on growing your podcast. And over the past couple of years, here's some of the results. We've grown to over 55 million views. We've managed over 35 podcasts. We've produced over 500 podcast episodes and generated over $1 million in revenue for our clients. And it's all due to streamlined systems, processes, and tools. These are the tools that we'll be teaching you, that we'll be educating you, that will be helping you build a podcast of influence. It's not just about editing, it's not just about execution, it's everything that comes with it. It's the strategy, it's the background, it's the framework that makes you become a key person of influence. If you finally want to grow and scale your podcast for your business, then schedule a call right down below and schedule a call with me. We'll walk through exactly where you are with your podcast, make you grow your podcast, build your influence, and monetize your content today.
Look, I always say that all of writing is psychology. Actually, 99% of it is psychology. The remaining 1% is just adapting it to the medium, to the platform, or to the format in which you're writing. I'm a big proponent of study psychology first, then study copywriting, then study marketing, then study everything else. Because when you really think about it, all of these platforms are changing. They're not just changing every 5 or 10 years. They're changing much quicker, right? If you look at LinkedIn specifically, we're talking about LinkedIn. If you look at LinkedIn specifically, the platform changed like 3 times in the last 6 months. If we're talking about what the algorithm prefers, what sort of content you're going to see in the feed, right? Which techniques work now, which techniques used to work last year, the year before. But one thing that doesn't really change that much or that often is human behavior. And once you tap into that, you are the king of social media. You're the king of content, the queen of social media, the queen of content, just because you're able to leverage human emotion and what triggers the human brain in order to get people to read something, get people to act on something, get people to buy something from you. Psychology is a really big thing of my process, just because I feel like if you don't understand what makes people tick, if you don't understand how to actually connect with people, especially people you've never met, right? We're all strangers on the internet. Even if you had conversations with someone 10, 50 times, whatever in the comments, you still are strangers you've never met in real life. Like you're just digital faces talking to one another. So, how do you have emotion in the digital world? To me, it boils down to writing. But again, you first have to understand psychology, then you have to apply psychological principles into writing. One of the biggest things in my approach is my dear son approach. And to to sort of just give you a really quick backstory how that came about. So I was expecting my son, and one of I don't even remember what happened, but yeah, one of my buddies, he's a startup guy. He was thinking of his next startup idea, and he was trying to monetize this cool concept of you register on Gmail or wherever, and you write one email per day to your kid, to your kid, from the day you found out that they were going to get born, those 9 months, and then their entire life. And at age 18, you unlock it, you give them the password, and then they can just read everything you've ever written to them. And I was like, that's actually so smart. That's actually so cool and amazing, because you get to have this unfiltered, raw conversation with the probably the most important person to you in the world. And I was like, you know what? What if everything I've ever written was in the same approach? So I genuinely, right after that day, I genuinely started adding 2 lines in all of my posts, in all the emails, in all the websites that I've ever written. I started everything with "Dear son," and then I wrote everything, and I ended with "Love, Dad." Huge difference. It's a huge difference. You know that phrase, like, if you can explain it to your grandmother, everyone will understand it as well. That is it. That's exactly it. You put yourself at ease, right? Your mind just goes into this mode of, I have to be careful about what I'm saying. I have to be careful that the person on the other side actually understands me. I can't act smarter than the other person, at least not 50 times smarter to the point where they feel like, oh, yeah, he's just bragging at this point, right? Oh, yeah, I can't trust this person. No, You actually want to relate to the person. You want to have a conversation. You want to continue the conversation, and we to drive more conversations as well. So the dear son approach really helped me with that first and foremost. And ever since I've shared it like 3 years ago on social media, thousands, I kid you not, I received thousands of messages of people just telling me, "Oh my god, this changed my way of writing, this changed my way of thinking." And it wasn't just social media posts on LinkedIn. It was websites, emails, YouTube videos, everything.
I love that, man. And why that's so nice is because it fits into your character, right? Like you are, soft spoken, gentle dude, gentle giant, right? The big, tall dude, like nice and like you're nice to everybody. You're very welcoming, and like that fits in really nice. Now, really well. The reason I want to ask you on this is what do you think about the more abrasive side of marketing and the more abrasive side of writing, which to be honest, I think is Twitter, right? It's where the traditional of we create an enemy and then we cast them out the side and then we throw stones at them, right? And obviously that works. Like we can see evidently that that's worked like over society, how it's worked for sport, food, everything, right? But how do you think about that? Because like yours is the opposite and yours is highly successful and effective. So it's almost like everything works, but at the same time, it's what works for you and also what works for your values.
100%, man. You got to pick your poison. My approach to marketing and selling in particular is vastly different from a whole lot of people I've actually looked up to over the years, especially the marketers that I've learned marketing from. There's one concept in particular that's pretty popular across the board. It's been pretty popular the last 20, 50, 100 years. It's called combative marketing. You have to pick an enemy, right? And describe what the enemy is doing wrong in order for you to describe what you're doing right. I hate that approach. I genuinely hate throwing other people, product, service businesses, service-based owners, whatever, whoever, under the bus. I hate being the guy who says, "You are doing this particular thing wrong, but let me now show you why my approach is right." And here's why. I feel like over the years, I've spoken to a whole lot of people. I worked on so many projects, so many products, so many launches to understand that sometimes that approach just isn't the way to go. If you have to tell me, if you have to tell me this is bad, and then here's why my product is good, I don't think your product is that good. I feel like there is a clear lack of confidence in a whole lot of people. And we're specifically now talking about personal brands on LinkedIn. If you have to call someone else out, like, hey, this particular, and you'll hear the phrase LinkedIn guru, right? Is doing this approach wrong? Here's why mine is better. My question to everyone who does that is, why not just skip the first part? Why not skip the part, the negative part where you say, this person is doing X wrong, this approach is wrong, this whatever? Why not just tell me, here's why my approach is good? Hey, here's my approach. Hey, I have something good for you. It is a total mindset shift in how you write and also how your audience perceives you, because you're always going to be that combative guy. You're always going to be that guy who has a bone to pick with, something, somebody. You're always going to be that guy who wants an enemy. And I'm not that guy. I genuinely coach people to just say why their stuff is good. You don't need an enemy to tell why you're the good guy. Just prove to me that you're the good guy. That's it. That's my approach. I hate combative marketing, period.
Mm. And have your own opinion, right? As in terms of you've built your own stuff. That's it. You already back your own stuff. That's what's interesting here is that you don't need to say all the other stuff you hate, right? If you're into a certain type of fitness, certain type of food, you don't need to say about everything else you hate, right? It almost loses its value to some degree without even being combative. It's like just get to the point. Back to your point, actually, make it easy, right? Don't make me think, make it very simple. So why don't we just go straight to the point and just get straight into the detail? And I think on a personal brand level, this is a hypothesis, it's almost insecurity, right? It's the fact that I need to be able to showcase how why they're wrong and prove that they're wrong for my own. And now that this is a generalization, but so that mine kind of works as a result. I'm curious about other psychological triggers that you're aware of that you.
100%. By the way, I will bring up one more thing before someone in the comments or anywhere brings it up. We, however, just now, like it is such a tricky thing though, right? We've just been these guys who've done the combative marketing thing because it's just impossible to say why combative marketing is wrong without saying it's wrong, right? So I just want to make that clear, right? We're not calling anyone out specifically. We're just saying there has to be a better approach, right? Because I always get that comment like, "But aren't you calling people out right now?" I'm like, "No, I'm not. I'm just trying to tell you that combative marketing sometimes, yes, it's necessary, right? Like Apple versus Samsung, and they'll do their little back and forth bickering, right, with the ads and billboards and stuff. But it's like every single day, if you're posting about your service, your business every single day, you don't need to do that. That's all I'm saying, right? You don't need an enemy every day of your life. So that's one part of it. I feel like a huge part of personal branding on LinkedIn is the word authenticity. We have overcomplicated that word so much. I swear I get tired sometimes about from reading posts about authenticity. Like what is it actually? Like how do you be authentic? How do you sound authentic? How do you write authentically? I'm like, guys, being yourself is the easiest thing ever. Just stop pretending that you're someone you're not for the sake of people perceiving you as someone you're not. I'm someone who likes to say "whoop" in the real world as well. I say that a whole lot in my comments, in my posts, a whole lot. I kid you not. I'm someone who likes to crack jokes. I'm someone who likes to make people smile. I do have a motivational undertone in a whole lot of my speeches and a whole lot of my lectures, lessons, whatever. And you'll always have this motivational undertone in a whole lot of the posts that I write, in a whole lot of the comments that I write. So I'm not pretending to be someone I'm not. I also love to see people win. I come from a very small country, very small town. I come from Bosnia, which is like 4 million people. I come from a city called Zenica, 120,000 people, considering like where all these big creators are from in the world, New York, Los Angeles, whatever. That's a pretty small place. So I genuinely like seeing people win. And you'll always see that in the content. You'll always see that in the comments that I leave. And now back to the point. The word authentic, what is it? Just be yourself. Don't try to use certain things as a method for being liked. I recently wrote a post it was titled Kindness isn't a LinkedIn strategy. It's who you are. Because kindness is a huge thing. I'm very much known for posts where I push people to support smaller creators. Right now, we're I think above 200,000 followers on LinkedIn alone. And when someone like with that amount of following, right, says, go support those people with 500 followers, with 1,000 followers, 2,000, 10,000, it's a different thing, right? It's a whole different ballgame than on LinkedIn. And people do notice. So what started to happen over these last couple of months, Aaron, was a whole lot of people started talking about kindness because LinkedIn sort of started pushing this type of content. It really gets slightly more reach than the average topic, right? Especially those niche topics that you might be talking about. So a whole lot of people then started writing posts about being kind, about supporting others. But you know what? 5 seconds later, you go through their comments and you can actually see everyone's comments 24/7 available to everyone publicly. You can go and check how people comment, where they comment. They call people out, they fight, they complain, they insult others, and then there's a post about supporting others. That's not a strategy for growth. You can't hide who you are. Again, just to talk about authenticity, being yourself is the easiest thing ever. We as people have just overcomplicated what that means. My advice to anyone, just be yourself. As easy as that sounds, right? Like you just can't fake that. You just genuinely can't fake that.
And again, it goes back to like, don't tell me, show me, right? When I was working in the finance days, you know, there was only one rule in accounting, which was don't tell me about it, show me. Show me the numbers, show me what's working. That's all that matters, right? And I always remember that. It's the most valuable lesson I've taken from my fucking finance years. And why that's relevant is just because it's just everything to do with content. It's everything to do with even how people build businesses and even how people interact with people in there afterwards. And I think for me, looking back at it over the years, when I realized that I was like living like inauthentically, verticommas or whatever, was when I had the pressures of working a job or what I thought other people would think of me when I was at that kind of level. Although I knew that when things started to grow, and for me it was preferably YouTube, like obviously my YouTube is way bigger than my LinkedIn and stuff. It was because I just kind of had these conversations, just chill. I have a cut off t-shirt, it's like 10:30 at night, just chilling. We're just talking this up. And it's much more of my natural thought process versus how do I want to be perceived. But as a byproduct of that, the episodes grew much better, much faster. We've interacted with much more people as a result, and it's just like this natural. It's just a natural thing that now, if someone looks back and it would think, oh, like he's very used to this, but it's actually not. It's a fact that you have to almost have the reps in of screwing it up to get to the point whereby you feel comfortable enough to be yourself. That would just be my sake. Now, I wanted to get your thoughts on that too, because it's almost like loosening up to some
Oh,
degree.
absolutely. I feel like you're never going to speak to everyone on social media. You can't be all things to all people, right? But when you finally find your people, your tribe, the actual type of audience that you want to attract, the actual type of clientele, followers, whatever that may be, you start to loosen up. Like you start to fit into your own thing, your own personality, your own aura, energy, and people start to notice. So, this is precisely the reason why you'll have different big creators was like compare my account. I don't care. Let's just take that as an example. 200,000 followers with someone else's 200,000 followers. There may be just a very small overlap of the people who actually follow us. We have almost entirely different people in that group of 200K and in the other group of 200K. Why? Because my personality, my type of content, the way I approach storytelling, the way I approach sharing is entirely different from someone else's, right? Again, I'm the positive guy. I support smaller accounts. I don't like to gatekeep. I don't like to sell really pushy. Meanwhile, there's this other side of the coin where people are like, hell no, I'm not going to share everything. I'm going to share 90% of it. The rest, the remaining 10%, I'm going to put it behind a paywall or an email, newsletter sub, subscription, whatever. And I don't care about just supporting, the smaller creators. Let me do my thing. I'm here to grow. I'm here to make money, and you attract who you are, essentially. I'm not saying one or the other is better. I'm just saying stay true to who you are because eventually people will see it. Like it's very hard to fake your nature. It's very hard to fake who you are. And the second you just accept that, the more in tune you become with who you are, with your own content, with your own community and the people who follow you. The easier it gets, really. The sooner you accept who you are, the easier it gets to show people.
100%. I have so much different ways to take this. I wanna. You alluded to the gatekeeping, and I've definitely my own school of thought on this. My approach is like you share everything, you share the strategy, and if someone wants you to do it, they'll pay you for implementation. And because for context, our business is a B2B podcast media company, so we run podcasts, and because podcasts are so complicated that when I explain something, people are like, okay, like this is valuable, I'll try it. Okay, it's a bit too complicated, like just do it for me. So it's worked time and time again. But then I see guys that are, especially in the coaching space, coaching, consulting space, who say, no, we should gatekeep it because if we give them the details, they'll go and do it themselves. It's not even, that's not really applicable to what I do because like, we have a team of 10, right? We need 10 people to execute on what we do. But I'd like to get your thoughts on that and like how, and I know you've already said you're very open about it, but do you think that's holding people back, right? Is gatekeeping holding people back from one, growing a business, two, growing an audience, and three, building a community?
I feel like personally, I have a very unique approach to sharing content on social media. I share everything. I always tell people share 100% of what you know, not 99%, not 98%, 100% all the time. And a lot of people have a problem with that. Now, disclaimer, I'm not saying that my approach is the only correct approach in the book. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying it's how I prefer to run my personal brand. I am someone who like, and it has a lot to do with my background. I'm someone again who, for the majority of his life, wasn't able to afford any courses. If I saw a $49 course, most of the time they were 149 online. I was like, no, let me try and find something on YouTube, maybe something out there. Like, let me try to find that PDF on Google just to learn that thing for free, just because I wasn't able to afford it, point blank. And I realize that there are millions out there who are just like me. They can't afford this sort of stuff. But also, even if we're not talking about the ability to purchase something, the ability to afford something, like the ability to pay for information, I'm thinking about trust, right? I'm thinking about what is the easiest way to actually show people that you know something that they should pay you for that particular information. And I don't care how many times I have to say this, the easiest way is to just share it all, share it for free. Because chances are people are either not going to react to it at all, they're going to be like, oh my God, this is so amazing. And they're never going to try it. The other thing is going to be people are going to be like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Let me try it. And then they might realize I need a coach, I need a pro to help me do this because as useful as it is, as clear of a pathway I have in front of me, I can't do this on my own. Like you said, you have 10 people on your team. It's not that easy to simply implement what you're sharing. And the third group of people I feel like is just people not caring at all. They're just going to take that. They're going to try and do with it whatever, they're able to do. And it might not be the results that you can give them, but it's results that they're comfortable with. And to that third group, I always say, that's a gift. Take it. That's my gift to you. You never have to pay me. I don't care if I ever earn a dollar from you. But to these first two groups, where people understand the value of the information that I'm giving out, but they're not either ready to apply it, they're not able to apply it, or they just don't know how to apply it. They will always come to a point where they're like, I have to apply this. And as soon as they come to that point, who do you think they're going to come to? Who do you think they're going to reach out? Of course, they're going to reach out to the expert they already know and trust, the expert that actually led them to the information. They're going to reach out to you. And again, I'm not saying this is the only approach in the book, but for me, sharing everything has been the catalyst to growing my brand on LinkedIn. A whole lot of people following, a whole lot of people appreciating it. And that's just me. That's just who I am. Sometimes I genuinely value that DM I get from a random person saying, I tried your approach. It helped me earn this many dollars. I can't ever thank you enough. And I'm like, that's all the thank you I need. You never even have to pay me. But that's just how I approach business. Yeah, it means a whole lot, to tell you the truth. And again, it has a lot to do with my background and where I come from, right? Not a whole lot of people are, okay with this sort of thing, just sharing everything and having other people, letting other people have access to it. I know a whole lot of people. I've had conversations with my peers and, friends from the industry, and I'm just like, "Okay, you do you." I'm not saying my approach is the only one in the book, but don't tell me that my approach is wrong just because it is working. We're booking months ahead. Like, the calendar is busy. One of the most frequent messages I get from people when they're trying to reach out and work with me is, "Do you have a sooner date?" No. It's a good problem to have. Like, I don't. I genuinely don't, because people are booking months ahead of time, and part of reason, like, the only reason I feel like is the content that I'm sharing. They see the value and they're like, "I can't wait to implement this, but I'm not ready to do it by myself. Let me wait for this guy." And that's the way it works, and we started hiring people to sort of ease the pain, and even if it's just, communicating and emails and all that, yeah, we're expanding right now, but sharing everything, it is just something that's never failed me to this day, man.
Well, that's why business is so nuanced, right? And that's why people argue and it's divisive and it's combative because you could do it one way, someone could do it your way, and it might not work, right? But what's worked for you, you have to double down on. That's just it, right? So if it's worked for you, you have to kind of work harder on it. And what's interesting, I've noticed too, was people who we had discovery calls with in like Q1 of 2023, they may have not been a good fit like financially at the time, but they come back around. This is what's interesting. I've had people buy 1 year later, and the traditional advice is a lead is either like qualified or they're dead. Where it was the opposite. They were on the newsletter, teaching them every single week, giving them content on LinkedIn, giving them podcasts, giving them other experts on my podcast for free when I wasn't the expert. And they were just constantly learning, putting in those 7 to 10 hours of time. And then a year later, they wanted to come to work, right? And I think that's what was kind of interesting was the fact that we didn't try to sell them anything. The content just helped them. And then at that point, when they're ready, they may want to make the change. Now, where I want to take this is probably want to go into the offer from here. I want to come back to the community for sure. But on the offer side, one thing I've observed from you is you have very simple offers. We in a world where everyone's guaranteeing, you know, a billion views and this, and there's a million guarantees. You have very simple offers. Like you help people with a brand, you help people with their content. Did you ever consider how do you think about this? Do you ever consider like creating something that's more scalable, like apart from just the weekly sessions or the one-to-one sessions? Because if you are booked out, is there more opportunity for you to build more scalable cohorts and so on in the future again?
100%, man. Thank you for the question. I feel like my current offers on LinkedIn are a couple of years old already, and I am at that point where I need to figure something else out. And that next thing is a private paid community. I've already announced it at an event that I did on LinkedIn, and by the time this airs, I'm not sure if it's actually going to be public information yet, but I am going to say it. I am launching a private community for online creators, specifically those coming from LinkedIn, because everyone knows me there. And that is the next thing, right? I feel like I've shared so much over the years on LinkedIn specifically, where people can just either do it, like it, act on it, or they might want the actual detailed approach, the one-on-one experience. That's what the community is going to be for. We're we're doing raw, unfiltered breakdowns of everything. Because the way I like to approach content is the same way I like to approach my offers in business. I want to give you a clear path to success, but I want to make it as simple, as easy, as easily digestible as humanly possible, right? This one piece of content that gives you actionable steps. That's how I treat my offers as well. I don't have a huge funnel, Darren. I genuinely don't. My funnel is an optimized LinkedIn profile, good content, and the good content brings people to the profile. And what's on the profile? Like when I say well optimized, it's literally one offer that I'm pushing one at a time. So right now I'm pushing just one-on-ones, one-on-one coaching. That's it. Because I already have a whole lot of clients on a retainer, and I can't, if I take on one more, I'm genuinely going to lose my calendar completely. I won't be able to service many more people, like if I just accept someone that I meet on a recurring basis. So I'm leaving my calendar open for those one-on-one, one-off sessions for people. And that's my current offer on the profile. If you jump on the profile, there's nothing else to do. You can either follow me or you can either book that one-on-one. Very crystal clear messaging, crystal clear offer for whoever is there. And that's it. That's the offer. And that's the same approach I take in my content, right? It's one post, one topic, one message. You'll never hear me talking about 5 different topics in one post. It may be one topic and 5 different examples or 5 different steps you can take, but it's always one topic and one huge message at the end. So, again, that's how I approach my offers. I feel like a whole lot of people overcomplicate their process. And I recently read something that kind of raised my eyebrow. It said that your offer is too simple. If your funnel doesn't have multiple steps, it doesn't look as premium. And I'm like, okay, I get where you're coming from, but I'm like, I have proof that that's not true. And then they come and tell me, like, but yeah, yours is still like a small scale offer. It's not high ticket. And I'm like, brother, I charge $1,000 for coaching. If that's not high ticket for a whole lot of people, I don't know what is, but I get the point. I get the sentiment, right? It's just one thing, one off thing, right? But it's still expensive for a lot of people. And yes, we are increasing the prices. That's very true. But I don't think your offer needs to be complicated or have multiple touch points to be sellable or to be more premium. My whole approach is simplicity and clarity. And if you provide clarity up front, if you provide that simple approach where people can, in my case, book you, that's it. The leads just keep coming in. I've said this before on other podcasts and in my content. Probably around 90% of the people that I work with there, I never speak to them. I, I I just never exchange one DM with them. All I get is my Calendly notification in my Gmail, and it says new call booked. That's it. And that's when I reach out to people. They pay to book, and the first message that I get is either them saying, "Hey, I just booked your power hour," or me saying, "Thank you for booking my power hour." And that's only because the profile is well optimized, the content is so easy to digest and so easy to apply, and the journey to booking is so quick and so not complicated. So, yeah, again, full disclaimer, I'm not saying this is the only approach in the book. I feel like I've said this already a few times in our conversation, but it works for me. It's been working for years. And the very next step is, again, making it easy for people to have full access to every bit of knowledge that I have, to this entire community of amazing people that are part of my LinkedIn brand. And we're going to have a private community, and everyone can have access to everyone. Everyone can have access to unfiltered, raw, exclusive, up to date information. They don't have to wait until I post, because I might not post about something, from, until months have passed. They can just get the, 401 in the community, and all the master classes, all the breakdowns. I really enjoy doing those, man. I so very much enjoy doing video breakdowns. But fun fact, I've never posted a video on LinkedIn in my life. I enjoy doing these master classes. You can ask anybody. I've done so many. You can YouTube a whole lot of my master classes. They're publicly available. But I've never posted a video on LinkedIn ever. Just because I feel like, for me, video is something almost sacred, where I feel like it's this really, really cool connection that I have with people, and I don't just want to give it. It's not even about giving it away. I know a whole lot of people will not be watching that. That's my reason, right? It's always going to get lower engagement. It's not going to prompt the same response as like a really quick textual post would. Yes, I'm a sucker for good engagement. Feel free to call me that. I'm guilty as charged, but the reason I don't really post video is because I feel like there is an intimate connection on video, and I really wanna keep that for my community. The community is probably gonna be 80-90% video based, where we're gonna have these master classes, these Q&As, these roast sessions, and everything. So, yeah, I feel like this was a really long answer, man. I totally forgot what the question was. I
No, man.
just
No, man, I love this. I love this. And the thing is that when you speak, my brain goes on, like, it fires like psyops in different directions. So just on the offer, right? Like, I love the simplicity of it. I love the simplicity of it. It does remind me of an old school LinkedIn offer. You said it to me, and I was like, where did I see this from? Which was like, book the call, and that's when this was, right. 2020, 2021. It was just booked calls, and that was it for coaching sessions, because I understand where that person's saying, like, oh, it needs more complexity in the area of high ticket, retainer for almost a year. Like, we do, 60K packages, which is a year. It's 5K a month for a year. Now, we do need steps. We need a DQ step, we need a call step, and we need a closing step. Generally speaking. But again, I met James Kemp last week, who said he uses a Google Doc. JK Molina uses a Google Doc. So there's obviously nuances to the actual case, right? Um, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you need to test it to see, does it work for you. So I tried to do a lot of things on Messenger only, or write text only, and it didn't work. I'm better on call. I'm better understanding people and listening to people. So it's fine, right? It just works for me. It may not work for you. That's why a lot of this stuff, even though we try to be very specific, has to be a level of generalization. Now, you said video, and you reminded me even more so of what I wanted to ask you on this was, have you seen the idea of YouTube Shorts coming to LinkedIn?
Yeah, LinkedIn has announced a sort of curated TikTok style, Reels, Shorts style video feed. And I don't know if I'm the biggest fan of that, to tell you the truth, just because not everyone can make good quality videos. Like, bad writing, I feel like, is more easily forgivable, just because it's harder to spot, harder to notice, right? If a post is super short, even like for a lot of people, if it's according to my standards and what I consider good writing and what I consider to be good structure, good spacing, this and that, even if it's badly written or poorly written, a whole lot of people will still read it, right? Not everyone, but a whole lot of people will still read it. I don't feel like that's the same case with video. Video requires a much higher level of concentration, a much stronger brain investment, right? Concentration wise. And I'm not the biggest fan of LinkedIn pushing video on people when I know for a fact that not a whole lot of people will do video well. And to me, I feel like that's just going to hinder my LinkedIn experience, right? I'm going to have to watch a whole lot of content that's not necessarily good. And a whole lot of people will then, obviously, it's going to be, I know it's going to be great for my business, just because then I can coach people on what to do, better, or, what to do best. But I feel like for a whole lot of people, LinkedIn is not going to have the same level of experience, just because of the fact that doing video with high quality video is much harder than writing a high quality post. And I'm just scared, man. I'm scared that a whole lot of people will start to jump on that train, and it's not going to be good quality content, and it's going to just be a trend that quickly goes by. We've actually seen this happen many times over the last couple of years. I'll give you the example of carousels. These are the PDF like slidable posts, like presentations on LinkedIn. In October 2022, carousels were everything. LinkedIn was actually pushing carousels a whole lot more just because at that point the argument was dwell time, right? People were spending a whole lot more time per post, like on that particular post, just because it had 10, 15, 20 pages. Therefore, it was a signal to the algorithm that, oh, people are actually enjoying this. So we're going to push even more people onto this type of content. So carousels were everything October, November, December 2022. But then a whole lot of people jump on that train just because it was a trend, right? Carousels were the thing. Carousels were the actual type of content that LinkedIn wants you to create, that LinkedIn wants you to consume. And a whole lot of very basic, very average, very generic carousels were a result of that experiment. Then we had AI, generative AI, ChatGPT content. A whole lot of people, even people who had nothing to do with AI, right? You know what I'm talking about. Like there was that giant, AI bubble in terms of topicality, and a whole lot of people were just jumping on that trend just because at that point it seemed like the algorithm was pushing that sort of topicality. And a whole lot of people jumped on that. And what do you know? A whole lot of that content, a whole lot of those posts weren't that good. Like genuinely, they weren't good. And I feel like we're kind of walking into the same trap with a video feed. People don't get it. Like you understand it, right? You do YouTube, you do podcasts. You understand the type of investment and the type of attention, the level of detail you need to have to produce a good quality video, even if it's just a vertical style video, very short, 30 to 60 seconds. It requires hours and hours of preparation, production, recording, post production. I don't feel like a whole lot of people can do that. And I'm actually scared of what the curated video feed might do for our LinkedIn experience. This is just me talking very openly about it. This is all to say, I do love consuming video when it's produced right. So hopefully, I'll be wrong and a whole lot of people will be doing video the right way. And LinkedIn will somehow filter out the well produced videos versus the, not so good ones. That's just, those are just my 2 cents for now. I feel like I love the idea of video and more, special content because I feel like video is more connectable, relatable, but I'm just scared of people just ruining that trend again. It happened again.
It makes sense, man. What I could see happening is the top guys who don't want to be like, hey, like jumping on a screen, just jumping in for a 15-second TikTok video. I can see them putting a post in a reel format and posting it as that reel. So you see that on Instagram sometimes. They'll put the text over it and have it in the background. I could see people like Matt Gray, Justin Welch doing things like that. And I remember hearing this years ago, that LinkedIn was easier to grow on YouTube or Instagram because there's less creative people on LinkedIn than there is on YouTube or Instagram. And what that just means is not even creative with the content, just even creative thought. Because when you're comparing yourself to an accountant that works for KPMG, yeah, it's pretty easy to be creative, right? The dude is like logical brain. So it's like there is that opportunity for you and there's an opportunity for us. So, we run a whole bunch of podcasts, but our second offer is ghostwriting for LinkedIn. So we write the content from the podcast into LinkedIn, and it's just a very easy, natural transition because our writers are very in tune with the podcast anyway. We can bring to LinkedIn, and we've been doing that for a year. That's the second offer. So when we saw the video coming, I was like, yeah, that's a really good opportunity for someone like us, who again has 10 people behind it, who work 7 days a week on trying to optimize video, right? Um, but that could degrade the quality of the content. It's just going to be interesting to see how it runs out. Now, what I'm afraid of seeing, which could happen, is So I wanted to be an earlier mover on this in terms of like prepping our team and our clients, which we did. We've been doing a lot of coaching on this in case it comes. But I'm afraid of them rolling it out and then rolling back the feature like they did with LinkedIn stories. That would be my one fear. Would that they'd jump in, we would jump in, and they would jump in, and they would pull out.
Yeah, man, look, at the end of the day, all these platforms, including LinkedIn, are just experimental in nature, right? They're going to have new features, they're going to kill old features, and then a feature that's new might prove to be not so good, and they might reverse it, they might kill it. To this day, I still haven't forgiven them for killing pinned comments. I love my pinned comments, man. I love that feature, right? Where you can just write something right underneath your post and pin it to the top and it's gone. You can't do that anymore. Or if someone else wrote something really smart underneath your post, you could pin it to the top to support that creator, to support that thought, right? Right now, by default, like the thing I figured out was by default, authored comments stick to the top anyhow, just because you're the author of the post. So even if you do leave like two, three, five comments under your own posts, for about 90% of your audience, those comments are gonna stick to the top anyhow. But that's not a feature, that's a prayer. That's a right? That's hoping that the algo stays the same and kinda treats authored comments the same way for years on end, and you never know, man. Yeah, I'm not always the biggest fan of platforms changing and adding new features, right? Just because it changes everything for a whole lot of people. Some people are really in tune with their processes. Some people have invested thousands, maybe tens of thousands, 100,000 plus in coaching and in learning certain processes and especially training their teams how to do it. I know because I'm invited to train these companies, right? I do LinkedIn training for teams and B2B companies. And I know every single time they make one of these changes, a lot of things in their content strategy has to change and adapt to. And it's just frustrating when you learn something, you get really good at it, your entire team gets really good at it, and then they roll it back. And this is obviously, we're not talking about LinkedIn, we're talking about social media in general, but that's just the nature of social media, right? I've been in the business for almost 20 years now. I've seen these platforms come and go. I've seen platforms evolve from one thing to a completely new thing. Like LinkedIn just used to be an online contact book. And then like 2010 to 2015, LinkedIn Jobs was like the biggest thing ever. And then, as soon as Corona started, when people started hanging out on LinkedIn a bit more, then the content focus started to come into play. And now it's a content platform. Like the main feed is everything. I don't think anyone even talks about LinkedIn Jobs anymore, even though it's still a big part of the platform, but the platform has shifted, the focus has shifted. So this is all to say I do keep my finger on the pulse, right? But I'm not the biggest fan of change, especially because I know it can mess up a whole lot of things for a whole lot of people.
Agreed, 100%. And I've even recognized that ourselves. Like we still do the bread and butter podcast stuff, but we're fundamentally a different business every quarter, right? We're evolving, adapting, and I almost say to our guys that if we're not changing every month, then we're not actually keeping up date, right? And I'll give you a simple example. You know the previews you see in front of a podcast where it's like the guy's like 60% of X does Y or whatever. I would have actually said we were one of the earlier people to do that in like 2022. So we were doing these like really high engaging beginnings. We started to prime a lot of people on asking succinct, short questions. We were very much ahead of that. And I was watching this random podcast about 4 hours ago, and I was like, everyone is just doing what we had originally thought was cutting edge at the time, and it's just not anymore, right? So things just change so quickly that you have to keep your ear to the ground, otherwise you're going to be blockbuster, right, all over again. I want to ask you about community. So this is interesting. There's two angles I want to take this from. One from the big account perspective. So you've 200K. I know many other creators that have 200K, but they don't have a tenth of the engagement that you have. What do you think community is based off, and how do you maintain that community and almost preserve it as time elapses so people don't just evaporate in the digital space, basically?
I feel like, by the way, great question. I feel like having a community on social media means different things for different people. For some, it means having a whole lot of people to sell to. For someone, it means having a whole lot of people whose lives you can impact. I'm in this group. I really feel like the content that I share out there, again, I share everything for free anyhow. I don't care if you pay me for the content that I post. I care about helping you grow your business as a whole, right? Beyond LinkedIn even. But for me, the approach has always been really take care of the people who are there. Because if people are investing time into following you, into reading your content, into hanging out in your comment sections, be there for them. One of the biggest red flags I see in a whole lot of creators is they post content, especially after they've like reached a certain level and they already have like numbers wise a huge following. But like you said, the engagement doesn't follow. And the reason for that is they post and ghost. We have a term for that, like it's posting and ghosting. You publish something, but as soon as the comments start rolling in, you're not there to respond. And that is a really bad approach when it comes to growing a community. Because what is a community, right? It's people coming together and it's people talking to one another, people supporting one another. And if you're not there as the leader of that community, as the founder of the community, that community is going to stop. It's not going to exist for a whole lot of time. So that's mistake number one that I see with a whole lot of creators. Like they're posting and ghosting left and right. And if you're gonna publish something and not be there, for the people who are leaving their comments, especially people who are super early there, you're never gonna have a really good community, right? The other thing I feel like is people shift their focus very often. And I see this a lot with a lot of creators that I used to come up with, like creators who started right around the same time when I did building on social media. They're gonna have one strategy, and then all of a sudden they're gonna be like, "Yeah, guys, this is no longer working for me. I need to be, I don't know, selling my course, whatever." And then for the next 2 or 3 months, all they're doing in every single post is just selling, selling, selling. And you lose a lot of trust by selling all the time. I'm not saying you shouldn't sell, period. Exactly, especially if it's different offers. Then it feels like all you're really doing is just asking us for money and you're never really giving us something, right? Because you have to understand that, like, people have a short people have, like, a short attention span on social media. They don't really remember what you said 6 months ago or 12 months ago, or people might not even be there anymore. You always have new followers. You always have new people coming in. So you always have to continue giving. So if you just give, 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 and then all of a sudden you shift your focus into ask, ask, and it's not even asking, it's demand, 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 you lose a lot of that trust. And then when they see that the engagement is just dropping and dropping and dropping, then they go back to giving, giving, giving. And it's like, oh, my engagement is no longer the same. That's the reason why you shift it way too abruptly. Like there's a way to sell, even if it's one offer, two, three offers for months at a time in a good way. You just don't have to do it all the time. I feel like it's just people's way of saying, I don't want to do the old approach at all anymore. So let me try something new, completely new. And that just shuts people out completely because they didn't follow you for the new stuff. They followed you for everything you've given us so far, right? So if you stop doing so, if you stop, giving, people are going to leave. So that's another thing I see, like a very abrupt shift in strategy, and I see this a lot, especially with sort of recent quote unquote problems with LinkedIn reach just going down and down. I have a hot take on this, by the way. I don't personally feel like reach is down, based on my understanding of the platform. Posts are just distributed differently. That's why the reach numbers are lower. It's not that reach is down, it's that the numbers are lower. Two different things. Let me explain. If in 2022 or 2023, your reach per post, like the number of views you got, was 100,000 views per post. And right now, all you're getting is 25,000 views per post. It's not necessarily less people seeing your post. It's not necessarily fewer eyeballs on your posts. What used to happen, and this is just me analyzing the platform left and right, having conversations with a whole lot of people. What used to happen last year and a couple of years ago is you would see the same post multiple times in a day and the day after and the day after. So if you had 25,000 people back then and they were seeing the post on average like 3 to 4 times, that's 100,000 views. Today in 2024, you still have 25,000 people. The only problem is LinkedIn is no longer showing your post multiple times. They'll see it, and if they choose to react to it, That's it. If they choose to not react to it, that's it again. LinkedIn is only showing posts one time. Like LinkedIn, I've noticed this with my own feed. I've noticed this. I've asked a ton of people. LinkedIn is no longer showing the same post multiple times. And I feel like that's the part that a whole lot of people overlook. Yeah. It's not that reach is down. It's just that the content is not distributed as generously as it was before. So this is all to say, like, stop caring about the algorithm so much, right? Like, we get so caught up in this conversation of the algorithm hates me. It doesn't. It's just that these platforms have a different way of navigating their own journey. Like, they're going to have an influx of users right at the beginning of the year or during the summer or towards the end of the year. And then they have to figure out how to distribute all this content, existing content, to new people and new content to both old and new people, right? So, again, you just have to look at it from a different perspective. It's not that the platform is against you. It's just that the content needs to be better so that you can actually, right, get people to distribute it to more people. Yeah.
100%. That's a scapegoat, right? If if you're blaming the algorithm, it's actually blaming you should be blaming yourself. I didn't realize that from that angle, and now I've
But my
completely
question is, like,
noticed that
have
though
you
that I'm not
noticed
seeing
that
the
as
same
well
stuff
on
twice.
LinkedIn? Like, last year, the year before, like, you used to see the same post multiple times, even if it was a post you already reacted to, you already commented on. Right now, you don't. Like, you see it once and that's it.
So what I was seeing was I would log back in, and that same post would be at the top. I would see that a lot. S that was that was no. Previously, the last couple of years, right? If I logged in and if I liked the post, suggest I watch the post, whatever. If I went back in on a different device, I'd see it on top, okay, and then that was gone. Whereas now I'm not seeing things at all again, at all. And I remember I've even noticed that recently as well that once and done. One thing that I am noticing, I'd like to get your thoughts on this, and I have one last question for you then as well, is I actually get likes on a post that I wrote like a year ago. That must be on some SEO feed search result, and the post in particular is about the amount of podcasts I give up. It's like 90% fail after like three, and 10%, 90% don't get to episode 20. That post still gets engagement from people who are launching a podcast. Some guys will be like, "Oh, like I'm just launching today or whatever," and that post was written a year ago. Do you ever see something like that
Yeah, the
happen?
reason why you're seeing your old posts pop up in your notifications or your old posts pop up for new people, even if it's like a 6-month old post or a year old post or even longer than that. The reason why is LinkedIn has this new feature that they just launched several months ago, where if you like a post, they're going to give you suggestions. That's posts that are similar to this. And also, if you search for a keyword, LinkedIn is going to sort those results by top posts, where the top post isn't necessarily limited by recency. They're going to give you a post that's 3 years old. If you search for a keyword, like for example, podcasts on LinkedIn, chances are if you have a 3 year old post that did really well, it might show up for people. I get this a lot now. I have a year old carousels, a 2 year old copywriting guides that I've written, and they're popping up in the notifications just because, again, another piece of content that's copywriting related might blow up, and LinkedIn is like, oh, here's another piece of content that's relevant to this. So you might also like this. So age for good content isn't a factor anymore. And I love that. Like, it's the true definition of evergreen content, which is where the conversation of quality versus quantity comes into play. I always tell people, like, you don't have to post every single day, but on the days you're posting, even if it's just 2 or 3 times per week, make sure that what you're posting is quality, something that's gonna stand the test of time, right? It's not just your instant thought, "Hey guys, I just bought a burger, it was delicious, blah, blah, blah," and then people react to it and right? You just wasted a post. Make sure that every post you've written is a banger. That's the word I use, banger. And that's the reason why, man, LinkedIn started doing these recommendations of similar to or content that's relevant to you as well. So, yeah, if for anyone listening and watching, if you're experiencing that same thing, that's why. So just focus on better content, I guess. That's the message.
I love how close you are to the ground with this, man. It's actually so interesting to see just knowing from the inside out. And that actually reference, man, is very close to YouTube. That's what YouTube is, right? That's why YouTube is a gift that keeps on giving, is that it has that relevancy of relatability. So if you're watching a video on growing on LinkedIn, you'll get a video from 2 years ago as well that was done by whoever. So that's the beauty of it, and that's why I'm really, really big on YouTube as well, because it's like the whole channel gets uplifted. It's like all rising. It's like rising tide lifts all boats. So something for you to double down on in 2024, 2025. But I want to leave it here, man. I want to say a big, big thank you for this. Next session is going to be in Bosnia for sure. I have a ton of stuff that I still want to get through. We'll do a 2 hour session around your schedule next time we can get it done. How does that
Amen
sound?
to that, man. I was actually considering, like, in our email conversation, I was actually considering traveling over to you to the islands. So yeah, I'm booked out with a lot of keynotes right now towards the end of the year. I already have a whole schedule, and I was just like, I can't fit that trip anywhere. So even if we manage to do this next year, either Bosnia or Bali or anywhere, I don't care.
We'll get it done, man. Even if you're in the UK, right? Something like that could be cool. But I'd love to, really honor your time and do a good 2 hour session. There's multiple, there's so much different things we can get into, and even the future of your content too. Even the private community, right? There's a lot in there, and even in the idea of building a community and why a community is working right now. So in the meantime, I know you have another podcast coming up. I want to say a big thank you, man. I
Thanks a
appreciate it.
lot, man. Thank you for the invite, and to everyone listening and watching, thank you for the attention. And if you ever want to learn anything about podcasts, follow this guy. If you want to learn about LinkedIn, writing, and building on social media, follow me, I guess.